Now, when it comes to nutrition, particularly in relation to trying to lose weight or achieve our body transformation goals, of course, we all come at it from different perspectives and we all have different levels of experience and confidence when it comes to actually implementing the specific diet or nutritional approach that you're planning to take. Now, if you were to work with someone like myself, I tend to work at 3 different stages, and it will depend on where you are at as an individual. Now, if you have access to a coach or someone that's going to guide you through the process, you don't necessarily have to start at level 1. Then you could start at say level 2, which I will explain to you guys in a moment. If, however, you have 0 experience or it's been a long time and you've struggled multiple times and sort of stop start quite a lot over the years, then you might want to start at level 1 just to build in the reps, just to get you some new experience with it again and kind of get you back on track. Now, level 1, of course, is the most simple, and basically it's the ditch and switch. What that means is we ditch anything that we just know inherently isn't going to be conducive to us achieving the goal that we want. So I want to lose body fat, for example. So we know that things like cakes, biscuits, sweets, crisps, ice cream, and so on isn't necessarily going to be ideal for achieving that result. So we reduce as much of that as possible. Now, if you have the discipline and the will to do so, you can, of course, completely eliminate it. But that isn't necessary for the majority of people. Now, it's maybe different sometimes if we have lots of metabolic issues such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, heart issues, and so on. Like if you've got things going on that you know need to be resolved, you may have to be a bit more strict and a bit more disciplined, particularly in the beginning, just to enable your body the opportunity to heal enough to overcome those issues. And then, of course, address your body fat concerns or goals. So that's the first thing. We ditch and switch. So we get rid of all the crap, and then of course we switch it. So we ditch the crap and we switch it for what we know to be healthy foods. Now, healthy foods are generally those which are fresh. So when you go to the supermarket, it's not the pre-packaged, pre-made crap that's got a shelf life of multiple weeks, months, or years. We're talking fresh foods such as your meat, fish, veg, fruit, herbs, spices, some grains and things if you can tolerate them. But we want the food to be as fresh as possible and as close to its original state as it can be, and as you're able to manage. And I say manage because many of us, again, don't have a huge amount of experience with cooking these days. If you do, fantastic. If you don't, it might be something you need some time and practice with before you feel confident enough to experiment with lots of different types of foods. So that's step 1. Just keep it simple. Get rid of the bad stuff, replace it with the good stuff. That's all we want to do. And that will start moving us towards our goal. Now, once we've got a few reps under our belt and we've maybe been doing it a few weeks or even a couple of months and we're used to eating better now and we want to step it up. Now we might want to put some structure into what we're doing as we move into level 2, which would be using something such as my metabolic meal method. It doesn't have to be that, but it could be that. And if you guys want a copy, just drop a comment below. Just say, hey, Ty, I'd like a copy of your metabolic meal method, and I will send that over. But as I say, you don't have to use that specific approach. But what we're now doing is adding some structure that ensures we're getting adequate protein, fats, and carbohydrates in each meal. Because when we just do the ditch and switch, we're not necessarily thinking about, oh, I need this much protein or this much fat and so on in order to make sure that I'm well nourished. We're just thinking, I'm getting rid of the crap and replacing it with good. But as we move into level 2 or stage 2, we now want some structure because hopefully by this point, we're a lot more active. We're starting to see some results. We're therefore, with that activity, maybe shifting, moving more weight, increasing load and things like that, and exposing our body to greater levels of stress through exercise and so on. So now we need to make sure that we're nourishing ourselves well enough to fully recover. So what we would do is add in some structure. So for example, my metabolic meal method, all we do, rather than count calories and all that sort of thing, we just use our hand as a portion size guide. So palm size, thickness, and size, for example, is a portion of protein. The fist is a portion of carbohydrate or veg. and our thumb is used to measure our portions of fats and so on for each meal. And depending on your specific goal and where you're starting, that will determine whether you need 2, 3, 4, or however many portions of each of those things in your meals. So that's stage 2. So stage 1 is just ditch and switch. Stage 2 is where we add structure using something such as my metabolic meal method. Now, as we move into stage 3, this is the point where we're looking at, okay, I'm looking for a long-term solution now. I've got some experience with food and with nutrition. I understand what proteins are, what fats are, what carbs are. Now what I'm looking to do is find a nutritional approach that is not in any shape, way, or form a diet. What I'm actually doing is finding the specific way of eating that works for my particular or specific or individual physiology. So I am biochemically individual, and we all are. And therefore, we all process proteins, fats, and carbs differently. Different foods are processed differently by each of us. Yes, we can argue it's relatively similar for the majority of us, but things like our genetic and ethnic background is going to make a difference. Things like our daily activity levels, things like the environment and the climate that we live in is going to make a difference. Things like the level of stress that we have going on in our home or in our profession or business is also going to make a difference. So now, rather than just go, okay, well, I've got structure around my food to make sure that I'm eating well and getting enough nutrition. Now we're saying, okay, I'm actually going to learn how to listen to my body and do what it tells me. So based on the symptoms that I receive from the foods I eat, that's going to indicate to me whether I need more protein or more fat or more carbohydrate in order for me to feel satiated, in order for my energy to be maintained, in order for my mental clarity to remain good, in order for my hormones to remain balanced, and in order for me to also continue to move towards my goals and so on, but also allow me to maintain any weight loss or muscle gain or whatever it is I'm after, because I'm going to be eating specific to what my physiology is telling me I need. Now, of course, that's a little bit of a process. With level 1 and level 2, it's just we can start from today or from tomorrow, and that's the new thing. When it comes to identifying our metabolic tendency, what we now need is a little bit more time and repetition and a bit of tracking in what we're doing in order to identify how our body is responding to certain foods. So this is something a little bit more in depth. It takes anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks to kind of fully go through the process for the average person. Sometimes it can be done quicker, because generally based on genetic and ethnic background and activity levels and so on, we can get a rough estimate of where to begin. But sometimes, because people don't always like to go all in and we like to mess around a little bit and fuck ourselves about, sometimes it can take a little bit longer. So that's why I say on average 6 to 12 weeks gives you enough time to identify, oh, right, well, whenever I eat a meal that's proportioned like this, we'd say, for example, 40% protein, 30% carb, and 30% fats, oh, I actually feel really good. But if I find that when I have a meal of 60% carb and only 20% protein and 20% fats, well, now I don't feel so great. My energy tends to spike and I feel real good momentarily, but then I crash, for example. So once we learn how to identify that and how our body is responding to each of the meals or individual foods that we're eating, it becomes much easier for us over that 6 to 12 week period to then identify, oh, I no longer need a diet. I need to learn how to respond to what my body's telling me. And once I do that within that 6 to 12 week period, I now will never need a diet again, because I've learned how to listen to what my body is saying. And what we find is we then just adapt what we're eating dynamically based on what our body tells us. And of course, based on our lifestyle. If my lifestyle changes and I suddenly become sedentary for 4 weeks, I'm not necessarily going to need the same level of protein and fat that I might have needed while I was training as intense as I was. So it's just about manipulating things to suit the particular lifestyle that we have and to suit the particular outcomes that we want. Now, I know to a degree it can sound like, well, why would I want to complicate things when I could just follow a diet? But I'm sure if you've tried following diets in the past, you realize, well, they don't last. They can get you a result or the result sometimes, but they never manage to keep you there, because quite often the diet or the restrictive approach you've had to take is not sustainable. Whereas if we learn how to eat based on what our body is actually telling us, which is what we would have done years ago as developmental man and so on, we would have eaten what was available in our local area, and we would have eaten based on what our body tells us we need, not what our emotions are telling us we need, which is what we often do nowadays, where we end up craving junk food or wanting to eat food in order to serve an emotional need because we feel like shit and life isn't going so well. So we want to soothe ourselves with treats, sweets, and snacks. But of course, they don't always serve the long-term goals that we have. So those are the 3 levels, guys. So first off, we want to ditch and switch. Just get rid of the crap, bring in the good stuff. Level 2 or stage 2 is where we introduce some structure and use something such as my metabolic meal method, which, as I mentioned, if you guys want a copy of that, drop a comment below and I'll get it sent over to you. And then the third stage, which is something we work into in my more advanced programs, is digging into metabolic tendency and establishing how you need to eat specific to your individual physiology, and therefore never need to have a diet again or worry about, should I eat more protein, high protein, low protein, or should I be keto or vegan or this? You don't have to worry about any of that shit, because as I say, your body will tell you what to do, and you just learn to listen to those symptoms based on the nutritional input that you're giving your body. Any questions on this, people? As I always say, drop them below. If you want to learn more about what we do, you can check us out at strongerthanlife.com. And if not, I look forward to seeing you all in my next video. Take it easy, people.